Hi, back again. I'm Frank, Ripple Effect. I just thought I'd talk a bit about, you can hear the passing traffic as they go by. I just thought I'd talk a bit about morals and ethics and maybe principles. You know, morals are those things that you hang up on walls, and principles are things that hold the ceiling up, and ethics are just short versions of ethnics. But realistically, you know, we're looking at morals and ethics. Now, morals is a sort of a shadow of ethics. So if you can make a statement about a moral behaviour, that statement is an ethic. And the morals are those ethics carried out. And that's the difference between morals and ethics. So ethics are statements, morals are those statements carried out in behaviour. But yeah, you look at how ethics and morals, more morals than anything else, are sort of coming to light today in this day and age. Now, I've been doing a bit of research, and also I've studied Christian ethics, which is quite unusual, because before, you know, you go back before the 1930s, say. Before the Industrial Revolution, which is a lot earlier, the late 1800s, you had the different religions, whatever religion you might be. You had Christianity, Islam, or Buddhism, Judaism, dictating what the ethics are, and they're the morals that you act by. And the way we would keep these morals and keep the ethics through our morals would be through the fear of judgment by the police officer in the sky, you know, the big chief that we have to all, you know, watch out for. And it's still very, very prevalent today. You know, look at some of the fundamentalists, whether it's Jewish, Islam, or Judaism. If you do something wrong, if you go against a commandment or something like that, well, you're condemned. You're condemned in the afterlife. Not in this life, but in the afterlife. Now, the more liberal people, nowadays, morals, ethics are replaced by law. So everything that can and cannot be done in society has a law behind it. For instance, I've got a shirt on. Now, here in Australia, if I've got one button undone. Now, here in Australia, if I would walk around the street with two buttons undone, there is a law that says that is indecent exposure. And the police can arrest you on the street for indecent exposure if you have two buttons undone. Likewise, there's another law that states that if you're walking down the street or just sitting down the street and you haven't got enough money in your pocket for one night's board, you can be charged with vagrancy. So you can see how law has taken over individual morals, and morals were governed by the churches who had a divine right to create these laws, or create the religious sanctioned laws. You know, thou shalt not, blah, 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 blah. I'll talk more about all those thou shalt nots, the Ten Commandments, later on, which I reckon are fantastic because they've got a basis in psychology, really. But that's for another day. And I've just experienced through work, through just other people, that nowadays a contract really means nothing. You look at all the marriages, you know, till death do we part, you know. Nowadays, you know, that doesn't really matter. You know, you don't have to die to get out of a marriage. So contracts now really don't mean much. You know, before a handshake, before all you had to do is give your word. You know, I promise I shall do such and such. And that was a contract. Then came the handshake. You know, you would make a deal, shake hands on it, that would be your binding word. Now you make a contract, and that contract and all those points in a contract would be your binding word. So we don't have to look at morals or ethics to say whether that contract is should be carried out or not. Now because the legal system is replacing religious sanctioned ethics, it's now gone from not what should I do or what shouldn't I do, because it has an effect on other people. It's what can I get away with. It's no longer, you don't think about whether, taking it to the extreme. If I break into a house, is it right or wrong? That doesn't really matter. Can I get away with it in law is more the point. So that's where the differences lie, really, when you have an internalised code of ethics and a state-governed statutes, which law and the police officers carry it out, which is, really the watchdogs of politics. They are the sheepdogs to keep the society in line. And if we can get away with it now, it's no longer a personal issue, it's a legal issue. So when you can internalise morals and ethics, that's where you can really start to lead a good life. If you just think of, or I can't do this because law says, or I can't do this because the law says I can't. Drink driving is a great example. Do we strive not to drink and drive because we know it's the wrong thing to do? Or do we get pissed, put the keys in the ignition and think, shit, can I get away with this? So that's where morals, instead of being about you in relation to the rest of society, it's now you in relation to law. And I thought that's a very interesting sort of subject to look at, because like in one journal article I've just read, because there is no really respected power to say, look, these are the ethics you should live by, and there is no question about it, you should live by them. Like Catholicism or Judaism. Nowadays, in society, the vast majority of society really, we look at law instead of religious sanctioned morals. So now, in post-modernity or modernity, whatever your flavour is, I think we're in post-modernity, we have had to change in the last 30 years more than in the last 200 years. Because in the last last 1,000 years really, in the last 1,000 years, from the 1930s or Industrial Revolution, before that you had the church saying, you can't do this, you can't do that, otherwise you're going to burn in hell. But now, because so much has changed in the last 30 years with the respect of religious authorities, with respect to politics, you look at what they make a promise today and break it tomorrow. We have to make our own ethics, our own moral guidelines for ourselves, and that's where the greatest amount of stress is. Because this research paper that I've looked at says that one of the biggest stresses that we face today is trying to make our own moral code. And it might be different to the person sitting next to you, or the person that you just met on the bus or in the taxi driver. So you have to make your own moral code, and hopefully that's in sync with a universal moral code and a universal ethic. The universal ethics is like, love thy neighbour, one of the 10 commandments, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not covet thy neighbour's wife. They're sort of the universal principles. So if your ethics are in line with the universal ethics, well, that's fantastic. You've done a fantastic job with yourself. If they're not, well, it's time to go back to Sunday school and learn those. And that's where we all sort of fall down. You know, where do we draw the line? You know, if we go out with a bunch of mates and you're a smoker like I am, and somebody passes you a joint, you know, what's your ethics going to say? Hey, I smoke anyhow. I might as well take a drag. Why not? So you take a drag. Have you just crossed an ethical guideline of your own? I shall not take drugs is your statement. The moral behaviour comes out as you shall not take drugs. But you know, you smoke anyhow. That tobacco, it's a stimulant. So how much different is it to smoke cannabis? Well, it's not much of a line to cross, but it is a line to cross. So I just sort of rant and rave about ethics and morals, really. I just find it strange where people say that they are a man of their word or a person of their word, and yet 5 minutes later they break it, or a person signs a marriage contract. 6 years or 7 years down the track, they break it. You know, it's nobody wants to fight to keep something alive anymore. It's more saying, hey, listen, you know, how can I get out of it? So we don't have to really think about ourselves anymore in relation to other people. We just think of ourselves as in relation to the law. What can we get away with? That's really an issue, I think, that needs to be addressed in society. It's something that I talk about with some of my clients. That hey, listen, you know, maybe the big reason you've got so much depression is because your philosophy of life is all screwed up. You know, it could be that you have one idea of how people should act, and they don't. You have one idea of how government bodies, which we elect into power, should work for the benefit of society, or and in the flow-on effect, the benefit to us. But quite frankly, they just don't. Yeah. Well, that's interesting. I thought I'd talk about that. I might make another one in a second on something else. I don't know. I hope you don't mind the backdrop. I've got a door on my left and a door on my right, and the other way around. And I suppose it represents the two ears. You know, information in, information out. Okay, I'll talk to you again later.